Good morning, class. Here's where we left off from our last week's reading of Call It Courage. We had Mufatsu making himself some clothing, and now he's on adventure walking around the island today when he comes across this. Let's find out what it is. One morning, wandering far down the beach, Mufatsu came upon a sheltered cove. His heart gave a leap of joy, for there, white gleaming in the sun, was all that remained of the skeleton of a whale. It might not have meant very much to you or me, but to Mufatsu it meant knives and fish hooks galore, splintered bone for darts and spears, a shoulder blade for an axe. It was a veritable treasure. The boy leaped up and down in his excitement. "Yuri," he shouted, "we're rich! Come help me drag these bones home." His hands seemed all thumbs in his eagerness. He tied as many bones as he could manage into 2 bundles. One bundle he shouldered himself, the other Yuri dragged behind him, and thus they returned to the campsite, weary but filled with elation. That's very excitement and happy. Even the dog seemed to have come to the understanding of what this discovery meant, or if not, he was at least infected by his master's high spirits. He leaped about like a sportive puppy, yapping until he was hoarse. Now began the long process of grinding the knives and the axe, hour after hour, squatting before the slab of basalt. That's a rough stone where you can sharpen a knife on. Mufatsu worked until his hands were raw and blistered, and sweat ran down into his eyes. The knife emerged first, since that was the most imperative. Its blade was 10 inches long, its handle the knob of a joint. It was sharp enough to cut the fronds of coconut trees, to slice off the end of a green nut. Aye, but it was a splendid knife. All Mufatsu's skill went into it. It would be a fine weapon as well, the boy thought grimly as he ground it down to sharp point. Some sea robber had been breaking into his bamboo trap and he was going to find out the culprit was. Probably that old tiger shark who was always cruising around, just as if he owned the lagoon. Fishing with a line and hook too long when you were working against time, Mufatsu could not afford to have his trap robbed. Twice it had been broken into, the stout bamboo crushed, and the contents eaten. It was the work of either a shark or an octopus. That was certain. No other fish was strong enough to snap the tough bamboo. Mufatsu's mouth was set in a grim line as he worked away on his knife. That old tiger shark, undoubtedly he was the thief. Mufatsu had come to recognize him, for every day when the boy went out with his trap, the shark, larger than all the others, was circling around, weary and watchful. The other sharks seemed to treat the tiger shark with defense. In other words, even the sharks were afraid that the big tiger shark was going to eat them. Hunger alone drove Mufatsu out to the reef to set his trap. He knew that if he was to maintain strength to accomplish all that lay ahead of him, he must have fish to add to his diet of fruit. So it's pretty easy to pick fruit off of trees and eat it, and that's fantastic, but you need meat to build good, strong muscles. Protein builds muscles. But often as he set his trap far out in the barrier reef, the tiger shark would approach, roll over slightly in passing, and the cold gleam of its eyes filled Mufatsu with dread and anger. In other words, he was afraid and mad at the tiger shark at the same time. "Wait, you," the boy threatened darkly, shaking his fist at the Mao. That's the name in his language for shark. "Wait until I have my knife. You will not be so brave then, Mao. You will run away when you see it flash." But the morning the knife was finished, Mufatsu did not feel so brave as he would have liked. He hoped he would never see the tiger shark again. Paddling out to the distant reef, he glanced down from time to time at the long-bladed knife where it hung around his neck by a cord of sennit. So he made this string and he tied the knife around his neck. It wasn't, after all, such a formidable weapon. It was only a knife made by a boy from a whale's rib. Yuri sat on the edge of the raft, sniffing at the wind. Mufasa always took his dog along, for Yuri howled unmercifully if he were left behind, and Mufasa had come to rely upon the companionship of the little yellow dog. The boy talked with the animal as if he was another person, consulting with him, arguing, playing when there was time for play. Then they were very close, these two. So that's kind of giving you a hint at what's going to happen next. He's finally got his knife. He threatened the shark with it. Now he's like, I'm not so sure I'm going to do anything with that shark. I don't know what you're going to do with a knife with a shark. Hope it swims close and try to stab it, or you're going to jump in the water and try to stab that shark. Well, we'll find out what happens tomorrow.